We are not doing chapter 5. If you missed last week, we spent the first half of the chapter learning a Mishnah from chapter 5 that was necessary to understand the sugya in chapter 3, but we're not doing that today. We are almost at the end of the Gemara that studies the Mishnah that we opened up with several pages ago. And the Gemara has really been talking about when can you and when can't you combine testimony to make it as if you have two kosher witnesses. Okay, so that's been there we go. You have your own? You have your own, okay. So that's really been where they've running. Again, just to review, the main idea has been if you have two people testifying on the same day about the same thing, but they're testifying separately, that seems to be acceptable to nearly everybody. There was a machloket, a disagreement when it was first brought up, but that has not driven the conversation ever since. Then there was the opinion if you have two people testifying about the same thing on two separate days, can you combine them? That was left kind of hanging in the air. And it wasn't clear if you needed them both to be in the court at the same time. Regardless, we then went down a rabbit hole following the concept of two people testifying to two different things which are substantially the same, right? So I saw you give Ron $100 on Monday. He saw you give Ron $100 on Tuesday. We're not going to use those two pieces of testimony to make Ron pay you $200, but we've certainly established that he owes you at least $100, and the court may combine those two single testimonies to make him pay the $100. That was understood to be the opinion of Yehoshua ben Korcha. Yehoshua ben Korcha then gets trotted out in the later levels of the Gemara when later Amorim are arguing to say anytime you're combining two testimonies, is that the opinion of Yehoshua ben Korcha? And remember, we had the rabbinic yeshiva in Sura in Babylonia and in Pumbedita in Babylonia, and then we heard about the other one, the stepchild of the yeshivot, that we don't hear about very often, but it comes up, Nehardea. And evidently the Nehardeans, we learned last time, want to combine testimony whenever. They combine all kinds of testimony, and the one that proved it was that they were even willing to combine the testimony about you loaned him 100 new coin dollars as opposed to 100 old coin dollars when you're actually being able to testify that it's a different loan, right? And they would say they would combine that. So that's what we had. Then the final case, not the final chronologically, but the other case we had a couple pages ago was the concept where the one guy says, oh yeah, you gave him 100, and the other witness said, oh no, you gave him 200, and the court would combine those two different testimonies to again establish that you at least owe him 100, and they would make you pay the 100 because owing 100 is within the debt of owing 200, and so by saying you owe him 200, I've also obligated you to at least 100, right? So they could combine the testimony for 100 with my testimony for more than 100 and make you pay 100, right? That wasn't necessarily accepted, it was just one of the arguments that was made. But that's the argument that's going to be necessary for today's sugya. Okay, come on in. Pass this down, please.
Oh, this one right here.
Got one? All right, we are on page 31A1. Ron, you might need to show them where the 31A1 is on the page. It's really weird. What 31A1 means, okay? All right, so that is the background. That's where we are. If you're in the Schottenstein Talmud translation, as I said, just a second. Very important. I'm working out how someone can get free ice cream in a rod. Very important. If I don't send this text right now, they will not get their free ice cream. That would be a shanda. Because we can presume at least some of it is chocolate, and chocolate is at the level of pikuach nefesh. Call anytime today, ice cream is tomorrow. Okay, there we go. Fine. See, I have connections everywhere. Nothing terribly important, but it makes somebody's day better. Okay, 31A1. On the right-hand side, a similar case of contradictory testimony is examined. Echad omer chavit shel yayin. So you need to know that in the commodities industry in ancient Israel, barrels of wine and barrels of oil were used like money, right? You could trade the barrel of the object and that had value to it. Fine wine was not as expensive as fine oil. Oil was by far the more expensive commodity, unlike our day. That's because wine was shipped in concentrate form, like it was wine syrup. And when you poured wine, you would put some of the wine syrup in your glass. You would add water to it and mix it. And so wine wasn't so great. I mean, it's okay, but it's not like the wine you get today. It's in a perfect glass bottle and corked and sealed, and this is not as good. By the way, the process of pouring the water in the wine and preparing it is called miziga, or mazgu lo kos rishon. They poured for him the first cup, right, in the Haggadah, which is from the Mishnah. Mazgu doesn't mean they poured; it means they mixed. They mixed for him. So that's what would have been.
Didn't they grow their own?
What?
Didn't they grow their own in wineries?
Some did, some didn't. But the commodity market had barrels of wine syrup that got shipped, and it had value, right? Okay. You mix it with water. Yes, you can mix wine with water, because after all, it's made out of water. Okay, now, so we have one witness said he owed him a barrel of wine. One person said he owed him a barrel of oil. Hava uvda v'ate lakame de Rav Ami, and it actually is a real case, came to a court before Rav Ami. Chayve Rabbi Ami le shalom ele chavita de chamra. And Rav Ami obligated him to pay for the barrel of wine, migo chavita de mishcha, because the value of it is within the oil. Okay? So since a barrel of wine is worth less than a barrel of oil, the two testimonies obligate that he at least owed him the equivalent of a barrel of wine, even though they weren't testifying about the same thing at all. That's a new scenario for us in this conversation. The two witnesses are not talking about the same thing, and they're not talking about the same value, and they're not talking about the same day. Right? They're talking about two entirely different things, but we can kind of say that the value of one is less than the value of the other, so they make him pay for the wine. It's very interesting. He makes him pay him a barrel of wine. If I borrowed a barrel of oil from you, and somebody else testified that I borrowed a barrel of wine from you, the court's going to make me pay you a barrel of wine, which I don't have because I borrowed a barrel of oil. So now what I'm going to have to do is probably sell the barrel of oil
To get the money.
to buy a barrel of wine to give to you, which is ridiculous because I owed you the whole barrel of oil, right? So this solution is weird. It's a weird solution. I wouldn't think that testifying about two such different things could be combined to make the guy pay anything. Okay, come on. So whose opinion is Rav Ami ruling according to, right? You can't just make stuff up. He has to be relying it on some earlier authority. Could Rabbi Shimon bar Elazar? Could it be Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar? Amar da'amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, because he said, Hecha deyesh bichlal matayim mane, where it is included in the general amount of the 200 zoos. So in other words, he's the guy who said, if you testify 100, the other guy testifies 200, we're going to make you pay 100, because there's 100 in the 200. Are you going to say that's the logic? You already know there's a problem, because there's no wine in the barrel of oil, right? So you can't be saying it's part of the barrel of oil. Right? It doesn't work. Kihei gavna, in such a case as this one, Miyamar, could he certainly have said it? Because it's too different. La tzricha. No, Rabbi Ami's teaching is necessary. Why? lidame, because of the value of the objects. So basically, we're already just converting them to a monetary value, and we're saying you owe that much. How you get there is your problem. Echad omer b'diota ha'elyona. So now we have another contradictory testimony case. One person says that the money is owed in the upper story of the house. V'chad omer b'diota ha'tachtona, the lower story of the house. Remember, sorry, I lied. The Mishnah from chapter 5 that we studied last week pertains here. There are 7 things in the court that they verify that the witnesses can know before they believe the testimony of the witnesses. You need to know what month it was, which year in the cycle of years it was, what day of the month, what day of the week, where it took place, right? So it took place at number 10 Downing Street, okay? Where in number 10 Downing Street? Maybe there's a public area of number 10 Downing Street, and there's a private area of number 10 Downing Street. Right? And one person said it happened in the public area, and one person said it happened in the private area. That would actually be a significant difference. Right?
So they wouldn't accept it.
Well, that's the case. So the question is, Achad omer b'diota elyona, one said in the upper story, v'achad omer b'diota tachtona, in the lower story. Amar Rabbi Chanina said it is, Maaseh ba lifnei Rabbi, that the case came before Rabbi, who's the editor of the Mishnah, no shtump, v'tzerif edutan, and he combined their testimonies. So he said, didn't matter. They both knew it was at number 10 Downing. They were there. They agreed on the amount. Everything else, it gets applied. So, and from where do we know that when a judge leaves the courtroom, he's not allowed to talk about the opinion, which was the last line of our Mishnah? And we're going to hear from a Baraita that teaches the same thing. Tanu Rabbanan. Minayin lecheshayetze lo yomar. Where do we know that when a judge leaves, he should not say, Hareini mizake v'chaverai mechayavim, that he's not allowed to say, look, I voted for you, but I got outnumbered. Judge is not allowed to do that. Notice in our Supreme Court, we know who votes which way, right? It's a matter of public record. You need to know who voted which way for us to know that the ruling was appropriate. That's not the way it worked. It was three rabbis, 3 judges. They voted in private, and they announced the verdict, right? They didn't announce that it was 3-0 or 2-1 or 1-2 or 0-, none of that. And they didn't say who voted which way. They just announced the verdict. So this Bright is going to say, how do we know that he's not supposed to talk about it after? Aval ma shechaveru rabu alai, what shall I do? My colleagues outnumbered me. Talmud lomar, they learn that rule from this line. Lo telech rachil be'amecha. Do not be a gossip monger among your people. Ve'omar holech rachil megale sod. And it says elsewhere in Proverbs, this concept of being a rachil is somebody who is a megale sod, reveals secrets. So what did they do? How do they learn this? There's one verse in Leviticus that says, Lo telech rachil ba'amecha, you shall not go out and say rechilut, gossip, among the people. And there's another place where the same word rachil is used next to the phrase megale sod, revealing secrets. So, holech rachil megale sod, rachil is also, you're not allowed to reveal secrets, and you're not allowed to reveal rachilut in public. So they combine the two, and they say that's the rule for the judge. Is that a convincing argument? If you have those 2 verses without any other context, would you have come up with the rule that this means a judge cannot reveal his verdict? Probably not. Not in a billion years. It's separate things. It doesn't say anything about a judge, although the first one actually talks about judges in the next verse. But nonetheless, you wouldn't necessarily come up with it, right? What they have is they have a practice that they know they do, and they're trying to find verses that fit it, right? Which is legitimate, as long as they can find verses. If they can't find verses, then they're in trouble.
The verdict could be either 2-1 or unanimous.
It could be unanimous or it could be 2-1. Remember, we also had the case it can be 1 against 1 and 1 I don't know. Remember? If it's 1 against 1 and 1 I don't know,
There's no
they have to
verdict.
bring in 2 more judges.
Or
2 more, not
2 more.
3?
2 more.
Or a semi.
So you always have an odd number. So you go from 3 to 5 to 7 to 9. Keep bringing in 2 every time you can't come up with the verdict until they come up with a verdict.
Yeah, but even if they have 5, if one judge refuses to vote, it doesn't work.
But the other judges might have changed their minds. So you wind up with like a 4-0, or a 4-1. No, you have 5?
Yeah.
3-1.
3-1.
You can get 3-1 and an I don't know. Now you have a verdict.
Okay.
And you still have a verdict.
Yeah, you could have a verdict. Although there was one case when we studied this that as long as you've got an I don't know, you got to keep going. But okay, nobody wants to have a hung court. The Gemara cites a related incident, and here's our final little maaseh, our final story. Hahu talmida dinafik ale kala. There was a student regarding Gali Milta de Itmar Be Midrasha. He revealed a secret matter that had been spoken in the study hall. Batar Esrin Vitartain Shanim, after 22 years. Abke Rav Ami Mibe Derasha, and Rav Ami expelled him from the study hall. Amar Dain Gale Razaya. This person reveals secrets. Okay,
What
so
page are we on now?
we're on 31A2.
Oh, wait.
31A2.
I'm not sure what,
Right there.
where the 22 years go. Was it 22
After.
years?
So you're studying in the Beit Midrash with Rav Ami, right? And
And that's a public place.
well, evidently not. It's the Beit Midrash isn't someplace that anybody can go into. Only the Talmidei Chachamim are in there.
But there are a lot of people there. It's not like there's one person there necessarily.
Probably not one person, but I'm hedging my bets on this because I want to ask you, what could the secret possibly be? What secret would be taught in the Beit Midrash?
You mean taught?
Taught.
It can't be a.
He was in the Beit Midrash.
Right.
A rumor emerged that after 22 years, he revealed the secret that he had learned. The Gale Milta de Itmar Be Midrasha. He revealed a secret that was said in the Beit Midrash. It can't have just been a private secret. Like, I told you a secret while we were in the Beit Midrash. Because then you wouldn't be saying it happened in a Beit Midrash. Right? It's got to be a secret that happened because it's a Beit Midrash.
Perhaps like the dealings of the holies of holies and things of that nature.
All right, so some religious teaching that is not allowed to be taught in public. Is there such a category?
Yeah, we learned that very early on about certain things that you have to have 3 people,
Right.
a person.
Okay, so the Mishnah is Ein Dorshin. It's the first Mishnah in the 2nd chapter of Tractate Chagiga. And it says, in the presence of 3, you don't study Maaseh Breshit, what happened at creation. In the presence of 2, you don't study what happens in the divine chariot, Ezekiel's vision. In the presence of 1, you don't study the forbidden sexual rules, unless, and it's not sure if the unless is applying to 1, 2, or all 3 of these, unless the student is a chacham, a wise one who understands it all by himself, then you can recognize that and study it with that person, but you can still only convey to him Roshei Prakim, the chapter headings over the details. So and then when we studied this, I forget when we studied this, like a year or 2 ago, we learned that there are reasons why you can't study Breshit with more than 3, you can't study Merkavah with more than 2, you can't study sexuality with more than 1, and it had to do with how attentive the students are to each other, that they could be listening or not listening, paying attention or not paying attention, misunderstanding, not misunderstanding, and oy vavoy, the misunderstanding, the last category, if you don't understand who you can and can't procreate with, all kinds of bad things happen, so you need to have that one student's undivided expert attention, right, that kind of thing. All right, so there is a category. It's not the kind of mystical category of the Holy and Holies. The Holy of Holies is studyable. There's no secrets going on in there. It's in chapter 8 of the first book of Kings, where it's first described under King Solomon, and it gets talked about all the time in the Talmud. It's not a secret. But whatever Ezekiel is talking about with this mystical vision of the chariot in chapter 1 and 2 of the book of Ezekiel, of these creatures with faces and wings and wheels and all this kind of stuff, that's funky. And that's something that is really not supposed to be gone into in great detail. But we learned in the Talmud the reason they thought that shouldn't go into is they had several teachings of the Chashmal the flashing flickers of lightning-like energy that are happening in that vision, that when they studied Chashmal, people died. So somebody studied about Chashmal and they got blasted, presumably by Chashmal. In modern Hebrew, by the way, they've used the word Chashmal for electricity. So the electrical company is like the Chashmal company, which is not its original category, but okay. All right? All right, so that's it. So presumably Rav Ami learned a secret about sexual prohibitions or the Merkavah, or maybe even creation. And 22 years later, he revealed the secret of that lesson, at which point his membership in the Beit Midrash was revoked, and he was expelled from the Beit Midrash and never allowed to study there again, because he revealed a secret of the Beit Midrash.
Did they say who he revealed? Does it matter who he revealed it to?
Nope. Doesn't say, doesn't seem to care.
You don't even say who's who.
It doesn't say who the person was, which is interesting because it seems to be protecting that person's reputation, right? Because it doesn't make them a bad rabbi, or, they shouldn't be ostracized in the world. They're just not allowed in this place anymore.
Besides, they would be guilty of gossip mongering if they.
Well, with Elisha Ben Abuya, they don't seem worried about saying his name, right? And he's goes down the road to heresy and all this stuff, and they name him.
Yeah, but this is kind of a relatively minor.
Expelled from the Beit Midrash. Do I want to end this live video? No, I don't. So it's interesting. The internet gives me this notice that it's trying to reconnect and the video is paused and all this kind of stuff. But Gary seems to be able to get a whole recording of it, so I don't know why. If you go to watch the recording, or if anyone's watching online at this point, if it cuts out, please call. Well, it cut out, so I can't tell you to call. Oh well. Been nice knowing you. 31A2, Mishnah. So now here we go. New Mishnah, okay? Is this the last Mishnah of chapter 3? It is. We are in serious danger of finishing an entire chapter. Can you imagine? Quiz time. Do you remember why we started learning this chapter? I was thinking about this today. It's hysterical. Why are we learning this chapter? What made us choose this chapter?
You chose it.
I chose it, but I told you why. Kirk Kavanaugh. Don't even know who it is anymore, do you?
Yeah.
The most recent Supreme Court justice. Isn't that amazing? I've said his name to a couple of people in the last week, and they said, "Who's that?"
Oh, right.
Brett Kavanaugh. I mean,
That's
Brett.
all. That's
Sorry,
your fault.
Brett Kavanaugh. So Brett Kavanaugh, right? Remember, we were choosing what we were going to study when the Supreme Court nominee was in the news, and we went to learn laws of testimony in courts. We said, why not? All right, here we go. Kolzman, shemevi raya, even after the verdict is issued, whenever a litigant brings evidence to support his claim, soter et adin, he can nullify the verdict. So here's the question. Once the gavel comes down, metaphorically, because they didn't use gavels, and they've determined the case, and now you get a pair of witnesses who can prove you were right or wrong, can those people come in and undo the verdict? Seems the answer to that's going to be yes. Amar lo, if the court said to the litigant, kol ra'ayut sheyesh lecha, all evidence that you have, havein mikan ad shloshim yom, you must produce within the next 30 days, then the rule goes like this. Matzah b'toch shloshim yom, if he found it within 30 days, soter. He can override the verdict. Lachar shloshim yom, eino soter. He cannot override the verdict. So, it goes like this. We come into court, we give our testimony, the court rules, but I keep saying, I have more evidence, it's just not right. And the court says you have 30 days to produce your evidence. Otherwise, this is the rule.
And these are all monetary judgments, basically.
These are monetary. Unless it says it's din nefashot, a capital case, then it's just about money. Or
he
property
brings-
like money.
He brings 2 new witnesses.
Yeah, that he knew existed, and he just couldn't get them there. So he finally brings the witnesses 3 weeks after the court case is over. Those witnesses will be heard, and the court case will be redetermined according to the new witnesses.
So if he negates the other witnesses. In other words,
Well,
he
I don't
says
know
that-
what proof was there before or whatever. Let's say you've got two witnesses, but I can bring in witnesses that prove those witnesses are zomamim, and they weren't even there. They're lying witnesses, right? So now I'm taking out that guy's witnesses, and he has no case.
Can the other witnesses be punished
Yes,
for lying?
if they're zomamim, they can be punished. Yes, yeah. Okay. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. This is an important guy. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, "Ma ya'aseh zeh shelo matzah b'toch 30 yom." What should this person do if he could not find evidence in 30 days? Umatzah lachar 30, but he found after 30 days. Right? Justice is not served, is the implication. Amar lo, if the court told the litigant, Havein edim v'amar ainli edim, amar havein raya v'amar ainli raya, ulachar zman hevi raya umatzah edim, harizeh eino klum. So, if the court said to him during the verdict, look, you're accused of owing this money, or you're accusing him of owing the money, either way, where's your proof? I have no proof. Where are your witnesses? I have no witnesses. Then they rule, obviously, against the person, and then later he goes, ooh, I've got witnesses, or ooh, I have proof. Nope. They're not going to accept it.
Double jeopardy.
It's not just double jeopardy. It means he'd be proving himself false under oath.
Because he said that he did.
He made an affirmative statement that these things do not exist. And now he's coming and saying they do. He either lied then or he's lying now. But one of those two things is a lie, and that's enough of a problem that we're not going to allow it.
Why would somebody bring it if he had no proof anyhow?
Because he lost the case.
No, but
Oh.
why would he bring it in the first place if he couldn't prove it?
You've never been sued or heard of someone who got sued for something that didn't exist?
Too many lawyers?
All the time. All the time people get sued. Why do people sue for things that don't exist? Because every once in a while the other person doesn't defend themselves and the court rules in your favor, and every once in a while it's too expensive a lawsuit and the other person will settle or pay it
Settlement.
just to make it go away.
Insurance, nuisance, cheaper to pay.
Cheaper to pay the guy who's bugging you than it is to hire a lawyer. Crazy. Okay, so a little bit more to this Mishnah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is going to come back in again. Same objection. Ma yaseh zeh shelo haya yodea sheyesh lo edim. What do you do? The guy didn't know there were witnesses. The court case, it's not like the internet age, where the second you do it, there's a picture on Instagram, right? And the court case is on Yahoo News, and everybody knows when you're in the court and when it's going to happen. It's being covered in live feed, right? People might not have even heard there was a court case for 2 weeks after it happened. So they didn't know that what they saw was important. Then they heard there was a court case. They go, wait a minute, I saw that guy steal from you. I'll come testify for you, but you didn't even know these witnesses existed, right? That seems like a legitimate thing. So Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, what if he didn't know? Umatzah edim. Lo haya yodea sheyesh lo raya, matzah raya. He didn't know there was proof, and he found the proof. So you're going to, really? Now, Ra'asha mit chayev badin. Now, if a litigant saw that he was about to be found guilty in the litigation, in the court, v'amar kirvu ploni ufloni v'yaiduni. And he said, wait a minute, bring these two other guys to testify for me. O shehotzi ra'aya mitachat pundato, or he produced evidence suddenly from his belt, harizeh eino klum. These don't count. So you go to court, you're convinced you're going to win your case, kind of all puffed up, proud as a peacock. And then you see, as the judges start to talk, that you're in a lot of trouble, right? This is about to go terribly against you. He says, no, stop. Come on, you guys, come here. Come on, tell the judge what I told you to tell him. Right? Come on, testify. Or, oh, hey, you know what? I actually have something here. I want you guys to look at. Too late.
Too late?
Too late. Got to bring everything out during the actual case. You can't wait to see that you're getting ruled against and then miraculously bring something else out. Why would you not have brought these people forward before? Something's wrong with them. there's nothing wrong with them. You would have brought them forward. Why would you not have brought this thing in your belt out from before?
But in the case of like having witnesses, what if at first they don't want to be involved? So perhaps they don't say anything.
So they said they didn't want to testify. They're not allowed to not testify. The Torah actually has a verse that commands you to testify if you've witnessed. So you must. You
Is
must.
there a time limit between whatever happened to bring it to court?
No statute of limitations as far as bringing something to court. Now, what's interesting is that they seem to be able to put a limit on the other end of new evidence being brought to court. 30 days, right? Which is interesting because now, I mean, you have people in prison 20 years, new evidence comes up and they get freed.
You don't go to prison for monetary issues.
Correct, they didn't have people in prison, but you had to pay, you could have lost your farm, right?
Well, you have 30 days before you have to settle, obviously.
Yeah. All right, let's see what the Gemara does with this. Page 31a3. Gemara presents a ruling in the first dispute between sages and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Let's make sure we remember what that was. That was evidence within 30 days. Evidence after 30 days not accepted. Shimon ben Gamliel said, why not? All right, here we go. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna. Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, said, Halacha ka Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Well, that's important to know. He says the halacha actually follows Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel here. Another ruling of Rabba bar Rav Huna regarding the dispute is cited. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna, and he further said, Ein halacha kedivrei chachamim. The halacha does not follow the sages. Now, you might have thought, duh. If he says the halacha follows Shimon ben Gamliel, he obviously thinks it doesn't follow the sages. But the Gemara is going to come up with some cute way why it's important that he said it follows Shimon ben Gamliel and it doesn't follow the sages. Okay? So we'll figure that out. Pshita, obviously. Kevanda mar halacha ka Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, mela yadana de ein halacha ka chachamim. Since he said it was Shimon ben Gamliel, I would have known it's not the chachamim, so tell me something I didn't know. Mahu detema, you might have said is the answer. If I hadn't taught both sides of it, you might have wrongly said, Hani mile lechatchila, that this only applies from the outset. That Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's ruling is only the preferable course of action. Aval de'avad shapir dame. But if in fact this actually occurred, you weren't planning on it, you didn't know it was going to happen, it just happened, then it would be acceptable. You might have said that in that case, the halacha could be like the rabbis, or the halacha could be like Shimon Gamliel because of these considerations, one or the other, that there are times when either one side or the other gets the halacha, if you only taught one side of it. So he teaches both sides of it. It's like this guy and it's not like them. Teaches you that there is not a scenario where it could have been like them. Okay? Fine. Kamash Milan, therefore we learn de'avad mehadrinan le, even if it is reversed, that the halacha would never follow the sages. Now, the Mishnah says, Amar lo have edim. So the court tells the litigant, bring witnesses to support your claim, and he says, I don't have any. So that was the case at the end of the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel said, etc. Remember what he said? What did he say? He said the same thing. He said, what if he didn't know they existed? Meaning, he would want to allow it. Okay? So, the Gemara presents a ruling. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. So, the same guy, Rabba bar Rav Huna, said, this time in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Halacha kedivrei chachamim. In this case, the halacha is actually like the rabbis. So, in the 30-day case, the halacha is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. But when he said he didn't have any proof, the halacha is like the rabbis. Okay? Now, Amar Rabbi bar Rav bar Rav Huna, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, similar chain of tradition. He also says, Ein halacha ka Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. He reverses it. Not only is it like the rabbis, it's not like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. You're going to get the same structure. Pshita, isn't that obvious? I would have known it. Kevan damar halacha ka Rav Chachamim. Since I knew it was like the Chachamim, Mimela, Yadana, de Ein halacha ka Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. I would have known it's not Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So teach me what I'm missing. Hakamash Malan. This is why it's taught both ways. This is why it comes to inform us that if Hahi ein halacha ka Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, that in this case the halacha does not follow Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. If he didn't have that as well, ha bechulahu halacha ka Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. But in all other instances, it follows Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. You would have thought that as kind of a gross over-characterization. In other words, it says the halakha like rabbis, it's not like Shimon ben Gamliel. If you hadn't said it's not like Shimon ben Gamliel, you would have thought this is the only time it's like the rabbis. But every other time it's always Shimon ben Gamliel, which is not the case. So we don't want you to learn that. So he says it's not like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, which tells you in this case this is a difference. It shouldn't be brought to bear in every dispute they ever have everywhere. Is that a good argument? No. Is it an interesting question? No. Why is it here? Because the first one had a Peshita Kamash Milan structure, and so the second one, the Stam, the final editor of the Gemara, put in another Peshita Kamash Milan structure. He just did the same thing twice. Let's run the logic tree on this case. Fine, I've got the opposite. Let's run the logic tree on the exact opposite case and see what happens. The earth is not shaken by this particular teaching. Okay?
Now they're following precedent, in other words.
They are. They have to follow a precedent law. It needs to be based on somebody. But what's interesting, this doesn't normally occur. In this Mishnah, you have the Chachamim against Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Chachamim against Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. In the first case, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel wins. In the second case, the Chachamim win. That's actually interesting. That usually doesn't happen. Not within such a closely related topic.
Now, are they required to write down each case and each verdict so that they can follow
Evidently
precedent?
not.
I mean, how do they know?
It's an oral tradition. Remember, it was ink on parchment. These are expensive materials. So most things were done orally. The Mishnah was not written down until well after the age of the Mishnah. It was an oral tradition. There were actually court reciters in the room whose job was to recite the Mishnah to the Beit Din. The Beit Din was not presumed to know the Mishnah, right? So it's just like why does the judge say we'll adjourn for 15 minutes in a court case? He has to go look it up. He doesn't know the law. He's going into his chambers to poke on his laptop and go on to law.com or wherever he goes these days and find the precedents and see how it applies and look it up and refresh his memory. Some of it he knows, some of it he doesn't, some of it she knows, some of it she doesn't, whatever, right? They have to look it up. So they had that here too. They had people who recited the Mishnahs, which is how you can have a Baraita and a Mishnah that are so similar. Because the Baraita is the oral version that didn't get accepted as authoritative necessarily, but it might have been, right? So you have to deal with it. Fair enough? Here we go. La'apoki mehada amar Rabba Barhuna amar Rabbi Yochanan, and this comes to preclude that which Rabbi Bar Chana said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Kol makom shishana Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel ke mishnatenu. Everywhere where Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel was taught in our Mishnah, halacha kamoto. The halacha is like him. Chutz me'arev v'tzedan v'raya achrona, except for three cases: the guarantor, the tzidon, and the person who gives late evidence. So there is a tradition that Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel gets the halacha against the Chachamim 3 times in all of Mishnah, and this is one of them.
How far back do they go with the sages?
The Mishnah was concluded in the year 200 of the Common Era, so it was 1,800 years ago, 1,817 years ago. And the rabbis who are in the Mishnah go back as early as the year 30 or 40 of the Common Era. So the people we're studying are almost 2,000 years ago.
Wow.
Yep. And we keep learning them. This is Judaism alive today.
Yeah, but times change.
Which is why you have Talmud instead of just Mishnah. If you just needed the law that would never change, you would have Mishnah. But Talmud, the study of the Mishnah, continues to grow it and adapt it and apply it in differing times and places.
And does it negate some of the...
It doesn't negate anything, but sometimes the halacha comes out being opposite or different, but it doesn't negate it. Everything was valid along every step along the way. Right? Things can change, but you can't throw things out. The analogy I use with teenagers and college students is a beer recipe. The Mishnah is the beer recipe.
The original.
It's the beer recipe. Okay? You put this much hops, you put this much barley, you put this much sugar, you put this much water, you wait for this amount of time, you keep it at this temperature, you bottle, you cork it, you leave it along this time, and then you pour it and you drink it and you get drunk. That's the recipe for beer, right? It's a valid recipe in Israel, in Russia, in Argentina, and in New Jersey. But if I follow that recipe in each of those places, the beer will be different. Because the water's a little different, the hops are a little different, the barley's a little different, the sugar's a little different. I can follow everything exactly, but because the place itself is different, the beer will come out a little different. Does that negate the validity of the earlier beer? Does that mean that I'm not drinking beer? Is it the same beer? Ta-da. It's a perfect analogy.
Coca-Cola has got different recipes.
New Coke?
Oh, what- no, this-
New Coke is reform beer. They changed the recipe. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. All my reform colleagues, I'm just having fun.
That they are different recipes in different countries. So
Because
they-
tastes are different.
Because tastes are different, that they decided to make different ones. So here, yours is more accidental, this is on purpose,
Mine is more natural,
more natural, but they.
more
decided
organic.
that
Yeah.
People have a sweeter tooth in certain countries.
To change it deliberately for what the people want is not really the goal of the process. But what the people want is part of what does change, right? In our generation, people want women's equality. If you're living in a society that does not feel a drive to educate or employ women and give them equal social standing with men, then broad pieces of the Talmudic tradition are going to come out very different than how they do in our time and place. And that doesn't make either side right or wrong, but the hops and the barley and the water have changed, and when we study it here, this is how it comes out.
Sit down. A second.
Oh, I don't know. I would have to follow footnotes and pretend I knew it. I didn't prepare in advance.
The later case evidence is out.
It says that it's regarding a case that happens in Sidon in Mishnah Gittin on page 74a. So I forget. There was something in triggering me. There's something about the manner in which the get was witnessed and delivered. And that in this place there was an incident in Sidon where it happened this way, and some of the Chachamim said no and he said yes, or the Chachamim said yes and he said no, probably no and yes, and his yes was allowed, would be my guess. All right? We can go study Gittin next if you want. Although the Talmud class here did Gittin for like 10 years, so I don't think we should ever teach Gittin here again. Okay, what else? All right, an incident is cited, which brings to light a limitation to the sage's ruling regarding a litigant who stated he has no more evidence. So we're going to be on the case of the one where they said, do you have any witnesses? He said, no. Do you have any evidence at all? He said, no. They said, we have to rule against you. He said, I guess so. And they ruled against him. So that's the scenario. Hahu Yanuka dit va'uhu ladina kame de Rav Nachman. There's a child who is brought for judgment before Rav Nachman. And Amar le, Rav Nachman said to the child, Eat lach saadeh, do you have witnesses? Amar le lo. He says no. Eat lach raya, do you have any proof? Amar le lo. He said no. Hayve Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman found the child liable to pay. Hava kabache v'azil. Afterwards, the kid goes around crying. And Shema'uhu hanach inshe, and certain people heard him. And Amrule, Ana yadana b'mile davuch. We're familiar with your late father's financial affairs. The child brings the witnesses to Rav Nachman. Amar Rav Nachman, beha afila rabbanan modu. In this case, even the sages agree that this would be acceptable. Dianuka b'mile davua lo yada, because a child never knows his father's affairs. Okay? So this is a case of a child who's whatever, dad's died. The child's an orphan. There's no one else around. Kid's 10 years old. And the kid says...
He can bring suit?
And
No,
somebody brought
somebody's,
Somebody's suing the estate.
somebody's taking something from the estate. Someone's taking something from the estate. So, my dad gave me his watch. My dad said that his watch would be mine after he died, or the money in the drawer in his office is my college fund. Every week he would put a gold coin out of the till into the college fund, and that's not the business's money, that's my money, right? So the 10-year-old is trying to testify to this, but the people who are taking over the business or whatever else, or the creditors, he was in debt, whatever it is, are claiming that it's all the estate and it should all be paid to the people that the estate owes money to. So the kid's got no proof.
So who's bringing suit?
So now maybe the clerk who worked for his dad for 20 years goes, oh yeah, I remember he always used to do that. For sure. And I remember, and so the kid's walking around crying, I took my college fund. Well, I remember Dad used to do that. He used to tell us about it all the time, and we saw him do it. These two witnesses come back to the court, even though it's a case where the judges said, kid, do you have any evidence at all? And he said, no. This is going to be allowed. Remember the Mishnah said, if you said you don't have witnesses, that's it. But if it's a kid, we're going to allow it. Why? Because there's no reason the kid would have known. Right? An adult should know when he has witnesses. You don't bring a case without knowing you have witnesses. Right? They don't magically appear later.
So halachically, if the father says this is for my child, even though the child never had possession of it,
Correct.
it's still the child.
Correct.
But
Absolutely.
if he gave it in his will, then they'd be able to take it from the estate.
Correct. And the way Jewish inheritance law works is that inheritance is a heavily legislated process. It's basically probate.
Right.
If you die, your wife gets, your kids get, and then after that, your brothers get, and after that, your father gets, your uncles get. There's this whole series of probate relationships that your stuff gets divvied up in. If you die,
Without a will.
Intestate.
and your will is not allowed to contradict Torah law. So even if you put it in your will, in Judaism, those people can come and contest the will. Under Torah law, they get the money if they're next in line, no matter what your will says.
Really?
Really, because nothing trumps Torah law. Torah law is Torah law. So what do? You give it to your kid in your lifetime. And every day I'm giving this. I'm giving this to my kid's college fund. This is my kid's money. I'm giving it away. So you can be on your deathbed and you can say, I give, my farm to my friend. And that's your friend's farm. Right? As long as and deathbed's a bad example, but you can do that. And the kids can't come into probate and say, wait a minute, I'm the kid, Torah law says I get it. You can give in your lifetime.
Does there have to be a witness to that?
You have to have witnesses.
Try and prove it in court without one.
Right.
Yeah. Right? So that's what happened here, is it's a kid and he didn't have a witness. Later people said, oh, I know your dad did that for you. I'll go tell the judge. Don't worry, we'll make it better. And that's allowed. All right?
That works because there was no estate tax.
No estate, no death tax. Tata denafak shitara mitota yada. There's a woman from whose possession emerged a note of indebtedness that had been entrusted to her by the debtor and the creditor. All right, so you have a woman who winds up with this note of indebtedness from two other people. Amrale, she said to the court, Yadana bahai shtara defriyahava. I happen to know that this debt was already paid off. Heimana Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman believed her. Okay? So, what's the case? There was a debt, there was a document. Somehow this woman gets possession of the document. We don't know how. The debt is brought to court, or the debt is paid off, whatever it is, not brought to court. The debt is paid off. And the woman comes to court and she says, I have this proof, but I also know that it got paid off. So the document she has doesn't have the stamp of released on it that says it's been paid off. Looks like a fully good document. A no-goodnik could bring this document and collect twice on the debt that it describes. Right? So they're going to believe her when she says, yeah, I have this document, but I also know that it was paid off. Look what just happened, by the way.
first of all.
But
a
then
woman
it's
to be an
rejected.
aide?
Thank you very much. Look what just happened. A woman testifies in court, and on the basis of her own testimony and no others, she is believed and something happens legally.
And it says rejected the note.
Yeah, they're not gonna enforce the note, because she says it's been paid off. Amar le Rav le Rav Nachman. So Rav says to Rav Nachman, come on, like, where do you get that from? Karabi, the Amar Otiot Niknot b'misira, maintains that letters on a document may be acquired through handing over. In other words, the woman could have claimed that she acquired ownership of the debt when the note was handed over to her, and she's therefore believed when she says it's been paid off. Right? Rav Nachman replied to the ruling that the ruling was based on a unique circumstance. Amarle, Shani hacha dei baya kalte. It's different because had the woman wanted, she could have burned the note. Right? Like, why is she believed? She's believed because if she knew the note was paid off, why would she produce it at all? She could just destroy it because it's a no good note. It's like you ever find a check that you deposited electronically? Oh, I really should rip this up. Right? Because how many of you deposit checks on your phones? You and me, Ron, we're in the 21st century. Look at you. Very good. So, what do you do with the paper check?
I
With
always
the paper
put it
check,
on the back.
I put a little date on the back. I put a date on the back of it, and then I check my account 2 days later, and if it's there, I toss the check.
What do you do?
I just write on the back, that it was deposited, and what date it was deposited into the,
And then what do you do with the check?
I don't know.
I scribble across the front, deposit it electronically, which would basically void the check if anyone tried to use it. And then with most things, it lands with my pencils and change at the end of the day out of my pocket, and every once in a while I clean that up, right? And what I do is then I shred or rip up the check. So I let a day or two go by to make sure nothing bad happened, and then I rip it up.
I always make sure it's.
I never go to a bank, I go to the
Right?
ATM for money, and I deposit
So,
the check.
so if, God forbid, something happens to me and I left it on my nightstand and my wife finds the check, right?
What's cash?
She's got a check that says someone wrote out $1,000
Don't
to
you have
Rabbi
endorse-
Tobin.
Don't you have to endorse in the back for deposit only?
Yeah,
For
but
mobile deposit only. that's what they
nobody's
tell me.
looking at these pictures.
So
You
she
could
brings
scribble
in one-
Mickey Mouse is my lover on the
Oh, I
back,
realize
and
that.
the check would go right through.
Right.
Checks that are unsigned go through when you
Right.
deposit.
All
them,
the
so,
time,
yeah.
all the time. You don't have to do anything. It's only if you hand it to a clerk, and they almost don't exist anymore.
This is actually a case that my brother-in-law,
Yep.
after he passed away, we found a box, and in it there was a promissory note
Uh-huh.
that we found out by the wife that it was paid, but he did not destroy it. It was
Yeah,
still
it's
there.
a
We
perfectly
put-
good promissory note.
Yeah, it was a promissory.
Right, it's a real case. So a dishonest person could use that.
Yeah, you could.
So there's a general principle you see come up in different ways in the Talmudic system, that if somebody says something that in a sideways way implicates them or diminishes their potential claims, right? So I say something, but if I hadn't said it, I could have gotten money, right? So I become very believable when I do that.
But why would she have produced the note in the first place if it was paid off?
Could have fallen out of her pocket or something.
No, if it was a man with there's no difference, I always say that there's no difference between man and woman.
Isn't it interesting that it's a woman? Because if it were a man, you would assume they would have the same halacha. So why did they teach that it's a woman?
Follows from the child, which is, I also can't be a witness, now a woman
Right.
can't be a witness.
Right.
So it follows,
But the,
yeah.
Well, but they weren't asking the child to be a witness,
No,
they're
no,
asking
but
him to bring a
it's-
witness.
But the case dealing with a
Right.
child and a woman, and both of them
Are
have
not
lower
kosher
level
witnesses.
of acceptance in court.
okay. Unfortunately, no matter how progressive we want to be, we have to read the next paragraph. And it says, Ikata Amrei, there are those, however, who say, La Haimena Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman actually did not believe her. Amar le Rav le Rav Nachman. Rav said to Rav Nachman, Vaha ibaya, if she had wanted to, kalte, she could have burned it. And and you should therefore believe her testimony is no longer valid. So this ending sentence in one version of it actually is convincing Rav Nachman that you should believe her in this case because she could have burned it, but she didn't. Otherwise, Rav Nachman would not have believed her, which is a different way to read it. Kevan de'it chazek bevei dina, but the note had been established in a court. Ibaya kalte la amrinan. We don't say she could have burned it. All right, so why didn't she burn it? Because it's a legal document. If you have somebody else's legal document, you don't burn it. Right? Okay, Iteve Rava Rav Nachman. So Rava challenged Rav Nachman on the basis of the following baraita. Simpon sheyesh alav edim, a receipt that has witnesses signed on it, Yit kayem bechot mav, is established through the signing witnesses. Ein alav edim, but if it's a receipt shalish, and it emerges from the hands of a third party, in this case like the woman who wasn't involved, she just has it, or it emerges in court below the signatures on the note, kasher. So the signatures are in the wrong place, so it's being held by somebody who wasn't involved. If it's been established by a court, it's totally kosher. Alma shalish meheman, thus we see that a third party entrusted with the document is believed. Tiyuvta to Rav Nachman, which is a refutation of Rav Nachman, if you interpret him as not having believed her. Right? So it starts out by saying Rav Nachman believed her, then it says, or you could say he didn't believe her, and they come up with a couple of arguments based on not believing her, and then they proved at the end that if he didn't believe her, he was wrong. So in other words, you should believe her. Okay? All right, that's 1 o'clock. I believe that in the next session or two, we will finish this chapter. Next week, we'll meet on Monday, and then I have a special 2-part session on Tuesdays. Next week, that's the 23rd, and on the 30th. I have a 2-part session on the rabbinic reaction to the destruction of the Second Temple, how they regrouped, and how they rebuilt. All right, so it's going to be 2-part. Lunch and Learn right here, 12 o'clock, same thing. So Monday and Tuesday for the next 2 weeks if you're interested. Talmud Monday and the other one on Tuesday.
Yeah, I made a mistake. I think I signed up for the Tuesday and then I can't come. But the second Tuesday, I should be in the company.
I didn't know that we had signups. See what I